I really think Donald Trump is having the time of his life right now. For the first time in his political life, Donald Trump is not the center of attention. And it's actually been an incredibly refreshing thing to watch. And Donald Trump not being the center of attention is going to be the thing that ultimately puts him in the White House for another term. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. It's great to be here kicking off another show on KCMO 95.7 FM. We are streaming all morning long on the KCMO Talk Radio app. This is the new Donald Trump, the new and improved, the mildly somewhat disciplined Donald Trump, who has spent the better part of the last 2 weeks letting Joe Biden crash and burn. He has not gotten in the way of the Democrats' circular firing squad. He has allowed them to focus their attention, to focus their ire, their frustrations on Joe Biden, and he has not gotten in their way. And last night, Donald Trump held his first rally. It was his first event in almost, 2 weeks since that debate. And it was really the first opportunity for him to potentially bring all the news cycle back around to himself. And he never really did it. He didn't really do it. Now, there were the Trumpisms. I was streaming it on my phone. It was all, the usual stuff from Donald Trump. You heard it once, you heard it 1,000 times. It's entertaining, but it was nothing out of the ordinary, especially by Trump standards. But I saw a guy who was looser, who was calmer, who was more confident, who wasn't making it all about it was about Trump. Trust me, Trump rallies are about Donald Trump. I'm not going to, tell you otherwise. But it was a guy who just seemed more relaxed than I've really ever seen him since he entered the political arena. He was having fun. It was a complete about face from 2020 when he was on the defensive, when he was all over television, all over radio, all over your social media feeds. You couldn't avoid Donald Trump if you tried. Well, Donald Trump's done a good job the last couple of weeks allowing you to avoid him. And even last night, he's, rallying up the base. I think Trump's kind of like the rock star who just needs that adrenaline rush from going on stage and doing a show. Trump needs that. Like, he gets off on doing these rallies. He doesn't need Florida. There's no need for him to do a rally in Florida, but I think he's having fun. He's enjoying it. His diehard fans want to see it. So he gets up there, he has a good time, and he does things like this. Challenge Joe Biden to 18 holes of golf.
I'm also officially challenging Crooked Joe to an 18-hole golf match right here.
Right here, right now.
On Doral Blue Monster, considered one of the greatest tournament golf courses anywhere in the world, one of the great courses of the world. It will be among the most watched sporting events in history, maybe bigger than the Ryder Cup or even the Masters. And I will even give Joe Biden 10 strokes aside. 10 strokes, that's a lot.
10 strokes!
That means 20 strokes in case you don't play golf. I will give him 10 strokes aside, and if he wins, I will give the charity of his choice, any charity that he wants, $1 million. And I'll bet you he doesn't take the offer.
All right, there's Donald Trump challenging Joe Biden to 18 holes of golf. He's giving him 10 strokes aside. He's giving him more than a stroke a hole, so on one hole on either side, the front nine and the back nine, Biden's going to get 2 strokes on 2 holes, one on the front, one on the back. That's a pretty good deal. He's cooking, John.
Trump sounds like a guy that needs gas money. He's out there going, hey, I'll challenge you to golf, and I'll bet you then you don't take the bet.
Yeah. Oh, man,
That's
it was
funny.
classic.
Yeah.
Classic Trump. And now I started looking up and doing some Google imaging of this Blue Monster golf course down there in the Miami area. So I want to see it for myself. But anyway, if Joe won't take the round, I will. I'll go play with Trump. I'll take 10 strokes aside. I'm not playing much golf these days.
One of the best courses ever.
Sign me up, man. Probably be the nicest course I've ever played on. So I'll take that round of golf with Donald if Joe doesn't want it. But that was Trump last night in Florida. He was having a good time. He was loosey-goosey. He's introducing Barron, his son, for the first time on stage at a debate. Barron didn't come on stage. He was just down there in the front row, but he's introducing Barron. He's just got a looseness to him that I've never seen. And it's because he's not stepping on the rake and hitting himself in the face with it. Ben Dominic writes for The Spectator. You may see him on Fox News once in a while. He wrote about this last night before the Florida debate. He writes here, headline, "The newly disciplined Trump is driving the left nuts." He says here, since Joe Biden's utterly disastrous debate performance, Trump has displayed incredible restraint and focus, not giving any fodder to the media to distract from Joe Biden's White House's flailing inability to deal with this moment. Democratic commentators have openly complained about the lack of public events from Trump, as if desperate for him to do something, anything, to shift the focus. Amid House Democrats' demoralized caucus meeting, frustrated donor calls, and Sorkin-esque fantasies about a convention blitz of replacement candidates, Democrats and their media allies would love to have anything gifted to them from Trump to talk about instead. Dominic adds here, it's an amazing trend to behold. The left got so used to this happening over the past 8 years, they just took it as a given. Now they're practically begging Trump to do something crazy. Could he pretty please say something we can call racist or sexist or start a beef with another Republican? The T-Rex is out of the forest, but he won't come eat the goat. That's exactly right. He won't do it. I said this yesterday when he appeared on Sean Hannity's show 2 nights ago. I said, it's not just that he's laying pretty low. It's also the fact that even when Trump was doing some media the last few days, he was just calling in. He'd hop on the phone, call in a Sean Hannity, did a few minutes, sure. But not even appearing on TV is very un-Trump-like. Trump understands the power of media. He understands the power of TV. He got $1 billion in earned media back in 2016. That's what put him in the White House. And the fact that he's just like, yeah, sure, I'll hop on the phone, but no one's going to really see me. Yeah, I'll do a rally in Florida here on a Tuesday night, but, not sure what else is on the docket anytime soon. He did not announce his running mate last night. There were some rumblings that maybe it was going to be Marco Rubio, formerly known as Little Marco, now known as Big Swingin' D Marco, I guess. I mean, now all of a sudden he's in Trump's good graces. But either way, he's sitting there and he's just like, well, I'm going to keep this thing going. And he was smart to not announce his VP last night. You've got the Republican National Convention next week in Milwaukee. Announce it then. That's your big week. That's your big rollout. Until next week, force the media into covering Joe Biden. He's got the NATO conferences going on right now. Make yourself hidden from the media landscape. That's what Donald Trump needs to do, continue to do, and he's doing that effectively, even holding a rally last night. There's not a lot that came out of it, outside of the fact that he's given Biden 10 strokes aside on the golf challenge. That's it. And when that's the biggest thing coming out of it, that's pretty damn good. It's like you can teach an old dog new tricks, I guess. They say you can't, but apparently there is hope for all of us to teach that old dog new tricks. Now, in the meantime, Quentin Lucas, as many in the Democratic establishment are running from Joe Biden, are saying the quiet part out loud. Not here in Kansas City, not our mayor, Quentin Lucas. He is doubling down on Pops.
Boom, boom, boom.
That's right. We'll tell you what the mayor of Kansas City is saying about that. And then at the bottom of the hour, property tax issues continue in Jackson County. And I think we've got a liar, pants on fire on our hands. We'll get to it all coming up in a busy 6 o'clock hour on KCMO 95.7 FM and streaming all morning long on the KCMO Talk Radio app. I mean, I'm flipping around through cable news right now. No one's really talking about the Donald Trump rally from last night. I mean, CNN, MSNBC. MSNBC has Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, on there for a long-form sit-down, probably propping her up in case Joe does decide to go. But that tells you all you need to know. I mean, they can't get anything out of the Trump rally last night that they can latch on to. So now they're basically trying to prop up potential Joe Biden replacements here on MSNBC. That's all they've got. That's what they've got. So in the meantime, back here in Kansas City, as Joe Biden continues to flail and try to figure out what his future holds, although he is apparently adamant he's not going anywhere. Quentin Lucas has chimed in. 9 o'clock last night, the mayor of Kansas City putting on X, quote, President Biden made time tonight to talk with mayors and share his plans for the next 4 years. From lowering grocery prices, writes the mayor, to cutting middle-class taxes, he's got a plan for the future of our cities. That's why I, along with hundreds of mayors, proudly stand with Joe.
He's a troubled guy.
Okay, that was Quentin Lucas on X last night. Lowering grocery, listen, I understand there will be tens of millions of people who will go to the polls in November and vote for Joe Biden. But do not vote for Joe Biden because you think he's lowering grocery prices or cutting middle-class taxes. The worst tax on the middle class is inflation. America has seen its cost of living go up 20% the last 3.5 years. That is a tax on the middle class. Inherently, that's a tax. By every definition, inflation is a tax on the middle class and the working poor. The guy's not cutting taxes for anybody. I know they'll feelmonger and say, oh, Trump's cutting taxes for the rich or something like that. That doesn't matter. I don't care what a millionaire's tax rate is. It does nothing for me. It's irrelevant to me. I don't care what a billionaire's tax rate is. That's also irrelevant to me. Stop trying to, pit us against each other and create some type of class warfare here. The reality is this. The 2017 tax cuts under President Trump did cut taxes for the middle class. Joe Biden wants those to expire and go back to the old ways. That would be a tax increase on the middle class. Inflation is a tax increase on the middle class. Pretty funny, some of the responses Mayor Lucas got last night. Randy writes back to the mayor of Kansas City, when you say tonight, how late was it? Asking for my country. And Mayor Lucas actually responded to that one. He said, 8:20 Eastern is when we chatted. So, okay. All right. Joe was probably in his little PJs and getting ready for bed. And they said, could you hop on the phone with some of the mayors around the country for us here for a few minutes? And Joe probably said, okay, sure. Right after pudding time. I'm happy to do that. So Mayor Lucas then goes on to say on his X, he reshared that post I just read and then said this. More personally, when I asked a question and mentioned my 3-week-old son, oh, come on, Mayor Q. Mayor Q's like the guy who's trying to, grease up the new teacher. That's what he's trying to do here. He's looking for that gig. Might be HUD secretary, who knows? When I asked a question and mentioned my 3-week-old son, oh, he knows what he's doing. Oh, man. Oh, Quentin Lucas. He knows exactly what he's doing. I asked a question, mentioned my 3-week-old son. Joe Biden talked to me about how special it is to be a father. After a long day with global leaders, he cared about us. President Biden gets real folks and what truly matters. He'll always have my support. Man, keep it in the pants, please. You got to be kidding me. Oh, my goodness. I'm going to throw up. This is too much for 6:24 in the morning. Holy cow. 913-408-7957.
Well, I thought I saw a video where Donald Trump hired somebody on the spot the other day, but I don't recall what year that might have been. Recently, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking about doing things for people. So.
Trump bought a bunch of cheesesteaks in Philadelphia the other week. Yeah. What's that worth? Paul in Kansas City. Hello, Paul. Good morning.
Hey, Pete, I wish the mayor would have asked the president about his $230 million pontoon bridge in Gaza. What a disaster. They're pulling the bridge because Biden can't even build a pontoon bridge. What an embarrassment.
Yeah, that's a great point there, Paul. I mean, listen, I could spend the next 20 minutes just you and me rolling through some of the embarrassments, but I guess, you just cover your eyes, you stick your fingers in your ears, and you go, la, 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 nothing to see here, right?
You do, Pete. The greatest country in the world, the United States military, we can't even build a pontoon bridge. And it's just a microcosm of the Biden administration. What an embarrassment when I heard that.
Oh,
thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Paul. On the text line, Pete Maricue should replace Karine Jean-Pierre. I've been saying that for months. He'd be much better at press secretary than Karine Jean-Pierre. I mean, guy's a great talker. Smart. He's not even twice. He's 10 times as smart as Karine Jean-Pierre. Most of us are. But it's very clear what's going on here. I mean, he's trying to fluff up Joe a little bit on X last night. It's been interesting to watch. So I'm looking at this, and I'm saying to myself, okay, what's the end game for Quentin Lucas? He is not going on X when the entire Democratic establishment has turned on him and just waxing poetic about this guy because he thinks it's smart or he agrees with it. I think he's probably saying to himself, while people are bailing on Joe Biden, I will stick by him. And if he's able to pull the rabbit out of the hat, so be it. We'll see how it plays out. Then you've got George Stephanopoulos. He was seen on the streets of New York yesterday. He was asked about Joe Biden by a guy who just happened to bump into him. It ended up with TMZ.
Hey, excuse me. Hey, how you doing? What do you think? Do you think Biden should step down? You talk to him more than anybody else have lately, and you could be honest. You don't think he can serve 4 more years? All right. That's an answer.
So this was just a random guy on the street who bumped into George Stephanopoulos, who did the interview with Biden last week, and he said, do you think he can do 4 more years? And George is like, no, I don't. He can't do 4 more years. No way, no how. So when George Stephanopoulos is saying that, and George admitted that was him in the video, he regrets saying that, but he did admit it to a random guy in the street in New York. That tells you all you need to know right there. 6:35 on a Wednesday morning as we roll through. Mid-July, RNC is next week in Milwaukee. We'll be all over that. Bill O'Reilly's going to be on the show to kick off the week here on KCMO 95.7 FM. As always, we are streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. People loving the Quentin Lucas segue in the last segment. Nice job by you, Mark. Very well done.
Such a nice man.
In the meantime, back here in Kansas City, we've got, I believe, a liar on our hands. Now, that's not a shock to any of you who follow local politics. You know, in local news, there are liars everywhere you look on both sides of our state line of both political parties. However, this is one of the most potentially egregious things we've had in Kansas City area history in a very long time. And that is the Jackson County tax assessment debacle that now finds itself, of course, in court. They had another court date this past Monday, and the next one's not till August 9th. Can you believe that? I mean, by the way, this is great for the county. They have like 1 day of court every month, give or take. They went to court 2 Mondays ago. They were back in court this past Monday. But the next court date on these Jackson County property taxes or the tax assessments not taking place till August 9th. Just insane. But most recently on Monday, Gail McCann Beatty, who is the county assessor, testified under oath claiming data collectors knocked on doors and measured every property that had a value increase of 15% or more. So remember, the rule, the law, says that if the county assesses your property at 15% or more above where it previously was, they have to physically send out an inspector or inspectors to look at that property if they're going to increase your assessment by 15% or more. And Gail McCann Beatty testified under oath that data collectors knocked on doors and measured every property that had a value increase of 15% or more. Something tells me that when we look at this story, and there's plenty of you out there who are Jackson County residents who had tax assessments increased by 15% or more, who never got a knock on the door, who never had anybody at your home, yet the county assessor is claiming under oath that you did have somebody at your home. KCTV5 was on this over the last couple of days. They tracked down McCann Beatty at the courthouse, and here's what this package sounded like.
I can't believe a word that she said in testimony.
Monday afternoon, the Jackson County Assessor Gail McCann Beatty took the stand and once again defended the 2023 property tax assessment, a testimony which these homeowners say was not true.
I can't fathom it.
Under oath, she testified claiming data collectors knocked on doors and measured every property that had a value increase of 15% or more. She also agreed that they typically spend 10 to 15 minutes on each outside assessment.
Do you have anything to say to the taxpayers?
Not right now.
I followed her out of the elevator after she testified.
The physical inspections.
No comments right now.
Physical inspections are required by state law if a property increases in value by more than 15%. McCann Beatty has previously explained numerous times that in-person inspections involve measuring a photo and documentation in the field. As we've shown you, her department even produced videos showing the process.
There was never a door knocker.
Something the Williams say never happened, even though their property tax went up by 40%.
There were no people from the assessor's office ever come through this neighborhood. Nobody ever knocked on our door.
They have Ring cameras surrounding their home. So do their neighbors.
None of us can find any videos of anybody being out here to not only measure our house, but the houses directly around us.
The Williams say they just want the truth in court and on their records.
When you're in a position to be held accountable, by God, be accountable to these people that expect you to be truthful.
It's one thing that from KCTV5, it's one thing for a Jackson County assessor like Gail McCann Beatty to come on this show and lie. Politicians lie. They'll lie to me. They'll lie to you. That's what they do. And she's not necessarily a politician, but a bureaucrat. Same thing. They will lie. But now, when you're doing this in the courtroom, when you are doing this under oath, that is, to me, somebody who does not fear any consequences. And why would you if you're the Jackson County assessor? You've overseen one of the biggest debacles in modern Kansas City history on this very issue. And nothing's come of it. No one's lost their job as far as I know. You're not elected, so Frank White's got to fire you, and Frank's too busy coaching first base for the Monarchs, tapping guys on the tush to fire his county assessor. So you start to feel like you're bulletproof. You say, why not lie under oath? What's the big deal? And nowadays, with the Ring doorbells, which you heard some Jackson County residents say, we've got Ring doorbells all over our house. We can't find any evidence that these people were here. Right? In the old days, or before we all had cameras all over our homes, you could say, oh, yeah, no, we had somebody out there. You just weren't home, so you wouldn't know any better. Now, I would love to see it where we've got residents saying, I've got hundreds of hours of footage on my Ring doorbells, on my cameras around my house, and I can't find you being at the home. There's no evidence that you were here. And here's the thing. The burden of proof should be on the county, where they should be able to show a date and a time that they were at your residence and prove that they were at your residence if your tax assessment was 15% higher, which means that you have to get a visit from somebody with the county assessor's office to justify that 15% or more hike. They have to be asked, and they should be asked about that. They should be able to prove the dates and times they were at these homes. And then if you have Ring doorbells and you have, not just a Ring doorbell, you got to have it all over the house, as a lot of people do. If you have cameras around your home, you should be able to go back and look at your timestamp and say, I've got no proof of you being there. And I have cameras all over my house. This is truly going to be the people of Jackson County rising up against a horribly corrupt local government and hopefully figuring out a way to win. And hopefully there will be not just political ramifications, but heads will roll all across Jackson County over this entire deal, John.
Well, you got to hold them to the fact. Didn't we use a third-party company out of Texas originally to do some of this? We can't let them get away with pushing it off on that.
Tyler Technologies.
There we go. I couldn't remember the
I was
name.
going to say Texas Technologies. I'm like, it's with a T. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Okay, there you go.
Tyler Technologies. Well, they've got to have the data then. Or they've got to have some type of bookkeeping on where they were and when and all that stuff.
Well, the plausible deniability. Well, they told me they did, so I assume, we can't let that.
Don't let that get in the way.
Yes.
To your point.
That's where I'm going.
Do not let that get in the way. 913-408-7957. It's 6:43. We've got the Morgan Wallen flyaway. Next chance to win just over an hour from now at 7:50 on KCMO. Jay Ashcroft is going to be here at 7:05. I got to ask him about whether or not we should care that he's not a licensed engineer and he calls himself an engineer in this Missouri governor's race. I know I don't think it's a big deal, but I threw it out there yesterday and the phones just blew up on this. So Jay Ashcroft's going to respond to that in 20 minutes here on KCMO Talk Radio. Am I seeing this right? Am I really? I'm flipping around, and if I'm seeing this right, Nancy Pelosi is asking Joe Biden to step aside. I don't have the audio on here on MSNBC, but she's been going off on MSNBC on Morning Joe here, and it looks like Nancy Pelosi may be asking Joe Biden to step aside. So that is something to watch this morning. We'll keep you posted here on KCMO 95.7 FM. We are streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. 913-408-7957 on KCMO. All right, not exactly a ringing endorsement from Nancy Pelosi just moments ago on Morning Joe, MSNBC. What she said about Joe Biden, she said, quote, as long as he has, it's up to the president to decide. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short. The host then responds and says, he's already made the decision. Do you want him to run? Nancy Pelosi says, I want him to do whatever he decides to do. And that's the way it is. Okay. It's kind of like a Kamala Harris quote right there. It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. That's what it sounds
is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's Nancy Pelosi. I want him to do whatever he decides to do, and that's the way it is. That's the way it is. Yeah, thank you very much. Nancy Pelosi. Got people in their 80s running the country. These are the kind of stellar quotes you get from folks. All right? So this is something I wanted to point out from KCUR, the National Panhandler radio affiliate in Kansas City. They are focusing in on the Jackson County prosecutor's race. We just got done talking about the property tax debacles in Jackson County. Now I want to spend time on the most important thing locally that anybody's going to vote on in the Kansas City area is the Jackson County prosecutor's race. If you want to see crime come down in KCMO proper, and property crimes in Jackson County, you got to get the right prosecutor in there with Gene Peters Baker finally going away. You have 4 people running, 3 Democrats, 1 Republican. The 3 Democrats are Melissa Johnson, who is Quentin Lucas's Director of Public Safety, Stephanie Burton, who is a defense attorney, and John Gromowski, who is an assistant prosecutor within the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office. So he works under Gene Peters Baker. This headline from KCUR reads, Jackson County prosecutor's race muddied by attacks of racism and anti-police bias. Now, mostly this is about Democratic infighting. Melissa Johnson writes KCUR, a black woman who serves as Quentin Lucas's Director of Public Safety, says she's been maligned as a bigot because she has talked publicly about the black community and the criminal justice system and has had the audacity to include these realities that we must confront. Johnson faces 2 other Democrats in the August 6th primary, John Gromowski, a white Jackson County assistant prosecutor, and Stephanie Burton, a black defense attorney. Now, here's the killer sentence coming up right here. The winner of that contest will face Republican Tracy Chappell. What do you notice is missing from the description of Tracy Chappell? They just described Melissa Johnson as a black woman. They described John Gromowski as a white male. They described Stephanie Burton as a black defense attorney. The winner of that contest will face Republican Tracy Chappell. They left something out about Tracy Chappell, did they not, at KCUR? What did they leave out there, John?
Well, they didn't describe her the same way, but I think their epithet Republican, they think they've tarred the whole picture there with one brush, right?
Well, I think they've done that.
Yeah. No, that we didn't. I don't know what nationality or how tall or what she weighs or
race,
skin color, or anything.
Yeah, none of that, huh? Just Republican Tracy Chappell.
Well, that says enough right there, Pete. Doesn't matter anything
what
else.
What more
right?
do you need to know?
They're all the same.
They're all the same.
We lockstep.
Yeah. Well, Tracy Chappell is a black woman. How convenient that when they talk about the three Democrats in the race, they talk about black this, black that, white this. But Tracy Chappell, a black Republican running for Jackson County prosecutor, KCUR doesn't put anything in there about her skin color. I wonder why that might be. I don't think they want people to know that a black woman is running as a Republican for Jackson County prosecutor. They don't want that out there. That would blow up their entire narrative at woke jokes like KCUR. Subsidies of, national panhandler radio. They don't want that. So that's why they write this stuff, and they conveniently just happen to leave out those facts when they give the race of everybody else in the race. They will not give you the race of the Republican in the race. They'll just call her the Republican candidate. That's not a mistake. That's not an oversight. And that's why I said sometimes the media bias you really have to look for, you really have to dig deep for, and you really have to pay attention to, because this is the kind of stuff that you get. On the text line, Pete, this proves that race does not matter and should not matter. Well, I don't think it should at all. I'm just pointing out, for the people that just love talking about race, for the people who are just obsessed with the idea of race, it's amazing how they only like to use race when they see it as a convenience for them and their political candidates. Otherwise, they won't use it. I don't care that Tracy Chappell's a black woman running as a Republican. I don't think it's really all that relevant. Do I think that it's beneficial for some people within Jackson County that could help out the Republican ticket? I do. Do I care if I was a Jackson County resident? No, I wouldn't care one bit. All I know is this much. Jackson County, and specifically KCMO within Jackson County, has been dealing with record levels of crime and homicides under the watch of Gene Peters Baker. And that has to change. And the overwhelming majority of those who have been on the receiving end of serious criminal actions across Kansas City, Missouri, in Jackson County, are black Kansas Cityans on a much higher rate than white Kansas Cityans or Hispanic Kansas Cityans. 70% of the homicides in this town are of black Kansas Cityans, despite the fact that they're 28% of the population in Kansas City. That's horrific. The soft on crime policies from Gene Peters Baker, the Jackson County prosecutor, is not working, and they have not been working for a long time. And she can blame Missouri gun laws all she wants, but it's amazing how it's not happening in Clay County. It's not happening in Platte County. It just happens to be taking place in the KCMO portion of Jackson County, which tells you right there, it ain't about the state law. It's not. It can be their convenient excuse, but it's not ultimately about the state law. It's just the thing that they like to say, and the media gives them cover when they make claims like, oh, boy, the big bad R's down in Jeff City. They won't pass the laws we need to keep our people safe. No, just take bad guys and throw them in prison. It's not rocket science. I have a murder to report. Murder, clean up. Mile 6, clean up. Of course, this is a media murder, not a real one. But this is just brutal from Peter Ducey. Fox News White House correspondent. He was the only guy until like 10 days ago who would actually ask difficult questions of this White House for the most part. I mean, occasionally somebody would slip up and accidentally ask a tough question, but for the most part, no one else did it. But obviously, last 10 days have changed everything. But Peter Doocy yesterday asked the very obvious question about Karine Jean-Pierre and Joe Biden after the report started surfacing that, Joe Biden's like a 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. president. He's getting up late, gets a briefing, got to get down for, the early bird special, and then call it a night by 7, 8 o'clock. So Peter Doocy asked what I think many Americans would like to know, and it didn't go well.
He also said he's sharpest before 8 p.m. So say that the Pentagon at some point picks up an incoming nuke. It's 11 p.m. Who do you call? The First Lady?
He has a team that lets him know of any news that is pertinent and important to the American people. He has someone that is decided, obviously, with his National Security Council on who gets to tell him that news.
Okay, that's... whoa. She didn't say, well, of course we'll wake him up. Peter Doocy asked, what happens if, there's nuclear war after 8 p.m. at night? What happens if somebody launches a nuke at 11:30? What does she say? He has a team that lets him know of any news that is pertinent and important to the American people. Boy, that's reassuring. Gosh, I'm sleeping so much better at night. I don't know about you, but gosh, I feel so much better. John, don't you after hearing that?
Well, they get to decide who gets to wake him up. She said, who gets to wake? That's when they send her paper, rock, scissors. Not me.
Oh, man, it's like sometimes do I want to wake up my wife before I leave the house, at 4:30 in the morning. It's like, probably not. Some days I do if she's rolling around and awake. Most days I obviously don't. But yeah, it's like, who's going to go in there and start shaking pops? Mr. President, what do you want? Mr. President.
I did it last time. Come on. It's your turn.
It's your turn, man. Get in there. Come on, who's drawing the short straw here? Oh, man, because, rocks, paper, scissors, you can easily cheat on that one. I've been teaching Claire rocks, paper, scissors, and she's trying to be the whole, wait for Dad to throw out his hand before I do it. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. 1, 2, 3, go.
The Jedi, huh?
Yes, she's trying to pull that on me with rocks, paper, scissors. So that is not exactly a ringing endorsement for the leader of the free world. He's sharpest before 8. If the Pentagon calls and says there's an incoming nuke, who do you call? The First Lady? Well, he's got a team that's going to let us all know about it. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that just inherently the American people are not going to be down with. They may not like Donald Trump. They may not love him. They may really kind of actually dislike him. But I'll tell you right now, Trump, we saw it for 4 years in the White House, and it still seems to be the case. The guy doesn't sleep. I don't know how he does it, but Bill O'Reilly has said this on the show. He's known him for 35, 40 years. The guy doesn't sleep. Sleeps like 4 or 5 hours a night. Then he's right back to it the next day. And in a landscape, in a world that is rapidly changing and unfortunately has become more dangerous and more treacherous by the day over the last 3.5 years or so, really more than that, who do you want taking that call? Who do you want to be the leader of the free world? I know you can fearmonger. Trump will just start nuking people left and right. I don't know. The guy was in the White House for 4 years, and there was a hell of a lot more world peace than there is today.
You know who is up all night in the White House?
Who's that?
Hunter's, I'm sure, surfing the net.
Surfing the net.
Pre-rolls.
Yes. Partaking in extracurricular activities.
Don't worry, Dad. I got it.
Yep. Pops, don't worry. You rest tonight, Dad. I got it covered, okay? I got my special sauce tonight, so we're going to be A-okay. Hunter's in charge. He's got his, he's got the pulse of what's going on the global stage. If Putin needs anything, if Xi needs anything, just call old Hunter. He'll take care of you. Meantime, the guy's, bought and paid for by half the planet. It's unbelievable. 913-408-7957. But on a serious note, too, I think about September 11th. We all know where we were on September 11th. September 11th happened before 10 a.m. in the morning. I want to say the first tower was hit at 8:42. The second one was like 9:04 a.m. And remember where then President George W. Bush was. Remember, he was sitting in that classroom, and the guy whispers in his ear, and he just sits there stoically. And people knocked him for that. I didn't think it was fair at the time. I thought, okay, he's trying to stay calm, cool, collected, think this thing through, and not just jump up out of his chair. Oh, my gosh, we're under attack. Joe Biden's still in his pajamas. And that was freaking 9 a.m. in the morning on the East Coast. No one sees him before 10 o'clock in the morning. Forget tax rates. Forget, all these different things we talk about just from a American safety perspective. Who do you feel more comfortable with? Well, of course, Mike Parson is not going to sit there and say, yeah, I'm really worried. Oh, man, I don't think we're going to be able to keep our two professional sports teams on the west side of the state. Or two of, I should say, our professional sports teams on the west side of the state. He's not going to say that. Nor should he say that. So Governor Mike Parson, who will be on the show tomorrow morning at 8:30 to talk about his trip to Kansas City, how he plans to potentially try to keep the Chiefs and the Royals in Missouri, since now we have the full-blown border war back at stake. He said here recently, this week, when he was up here in Kansas City, I'm not too worried about Kansas at this point. And that's what he should be saying. If he showed any weakness, he would look like a loser. If he was like, oh, yeah, I don't know how we're going to beat the state of Kansas. It's like, well, hold on. You're like the incumbent. The teams have been, in your state for decades. If you're that worried about Kansas, then that says a lot about you. Even if, behind the scenes, you're a little more nervous than you were 6 months ago or before the April 2nd vote, which would be natural, you're not going to go out to the public and be like, I'm really getting nervous about this whole deal. We could lose these teams. That would be a sign of weakness. So Mike Parson is not going to do that, and he is smart to not do that. He also said here, and speaking to reporters this week, he said, I think the Chiefs really want to stay at Arrowhead. I think it's a unique area, and it is, and that's the best thing they've got going for them right now. They have a place that they clearly like, that they want to stay in. At least they wanted to up until April 2nd when the vote went down in flames. It is a space that is convenient. You have all the highway access you need. If, or I should say when, the Royals leave that Truman Sports Complex, you've got it all to yourself. You can renovate however you see fit. You can do whatever you want with that space. It's all yours. You're going to leave to go to Kansas, take a chance on these star bonds, hope they work out, start from scratch in the middle of a cornfield and just be like, yep, everything's great. So maybe you can get a Final Four every 25 years and maybe you get one Super Bowl. Clark Hunt will get one Super Bowl in his lifetime. That's it if they go to Kansas. So maybe that's enough for him. But I don't think it should be enough. So I'm not worried about Mike Parson. A lot of people want to just knock Mike Parson for the sake of it. And don't get me wrong. I don't think he's been, the best governor we've ever seen. He's been solid enough, but I think he could have been better in some areas. But I don't look at it and say to myself, he's screwing this thing up. Not right now. He's showing leadership on the issue. He's getting up to Kansas City. He's meeting with Clay County. He's meeting with Frank White in Jackson County. It's nice of Frank to show up to work and actually meet with the governor of the state. That's, been a pretty big deal and a bit of a surprise.
Talk about a bombshell.
So all in all, I have no issue with the way thus far that Mike Parson is handling it. I just don't know what he can really do. He's a lame duck. Everything's done. The budget's set. Legislative body is home. So my fear is he's kind of talking a big game, but I don't know what tools are actually at his disposal and in the toolbox right now. And that's what we're going to try to find out more tomorrow when the governor's on this show here on KCMO. Now, speaking of sports stories that transition into news, did you see Big 12 Media Days are going on right now in Las Vegas? That's if you're a college football fan. That is when all the coaches and a bunch of players go to, a city and they talk to the media and they preview the upcoming season. So Kansas State was there yesterday. Chris Kleiman, Avery Johnson, all those guys. KU will be there today with Jalen Daniels, Lance Leipold, everybody else. Mizzou, by the way, next week, SEC Media Days takes place in Dallas. But the biggest story coming out of this deal is something that was said by Oklahoma State head coach Mike Gundy. His star player, Ollie Gordon, who's a running back for the Cowboys, he was arrested on DUI charges last week just south of Oklahoma City. He's driving down I-35. He's going 82 miles an hour. He's weaving in and out of traffic, and this is in a 65. He gets pulled over. He's got a half-empty bottle of vodka in the car, and he ends up blowing a .1 when he gets to jail. Legal limit down in Oklahoma is a .08. So this guy, Ollie Gordon, was still out in Las Vegas for Big 12 Media Days this week. And Mike Gundy announced yesterday as head coach that he's not going to miss any time. He will not be suspended for the DUI arrest. And he went on to explain part of the reason why on ESPN yesterday, and needless to say, it did not go well.
So I looked it up on my phone. What would be the legal limit? Like in Oklahoma is .08, and Ollie was .1. So I looked it up, and it was based on body weight. Not to get into the legal side of it, but I thought really 2 or 3 beers or 4. I'm not justifying what Ollie did. I'm telling you what decision I made. Well, I thought I've probably done that 1,000 times in my life. And I, it's just fine. So I got lucky. People get lucky. Ollie made a decision that he wished he could have done better. But when I talked to Ollie, I told him, I said, you're lucky you got out light because you make a lot of money to play football. So I looked it up.
Wow. I've probably done that 1,000 times in my life. Now, listen, have I had a glass of wine at dinner with Kate and driven home from a local restaurant? Yeah, I have. Do I think I've ever done it being over a legal limit? No. But that's not what Mike Gundy said there. He said Ollie Gordon, who blew a .1 over the legal limit. And by the way, it's not like he was driving down a side road 30 miles an hour from his buddy's house. He was going 82 in a 65 on a major interstate with a half-empty bottle of vodka in the car. I mean, that's like not a guy who had 2 beers and drove a mile down the road to his buddy's house. I love Mike Gundy. I used to cover him and follow him when I was working down in Oklahoma. I mean, he's, I think, the most underrated college football coach in America and probably is the most underrated college football coach of this generation. But, man, that is such a stupid thing to say. So he goes into damage control once that goes viral yesterday, and he posts on his X account, my intended point today at Big 12 Media Days was that we are all guilty of making bad decisions. It was not a reference to something specific. It's like, dude, what do you mean it wasn't in reference to something specific? You just heard the clip. I mean, he wasn't talking generally about bad decisions. He literally went full-blown analysis of blood alcohol levels and the state of Oklahoma's laws. I wasn't talking about something specific. What do you literally were talking about the guy's BAC, and then you were talking about body weight and 3 or 4 beers and, what's appropriate, what's not. I'm not one of these, like, Mike Gundy should be fired or anything like that. It's just, man, use your head. It's like we say to the politicians, before you speak, think for 2 seconds. And trust me, I know that's hard. I do this 4 hours every day. There's plenty of things I say where I'm like, that didn't come out maybe quite how I wanted it to. That's human nature. But the way he's going on about, I've probably done that 1,000 times in my life. And I'm not sure that's the message you want to be sending to young people, by the way. And if you're a parent and you're potentially sending your son to Oklahoma State University to play football, and you're like, I don't know if the consequences are going to be there for when my kid screws up, I'd be thinking twice about it right now. I would. Because that's one of those just absolute facepalm emoji moments for a really smart guy in Mike Gundy. What is he thinking?